this video, I'll provide an overview of stress, including what stress is, how the body responds to it, how we think about it, the factors that affect it, and how we can effectively cope with it. Let's get started. Stress is a reaction to a potential threat in the environment. It's basically a response to a demand put on the body. It could be an environmental stressor, like being cold, having harsh overhead lighting, or an overwhelmingly noisy office. It could be an accumulation of relatively small stressors, like having to sit in traffic every day going to and from work. It can also be related to physical pain, relational challenges, financial strain, and so on. Stress mediators are basically just factors that influence the impact of the stressor. For example, having good coping resources may make stress feel more manageable, but lacking social support may make it feel less manageable. We'll discuss predictability and control as factors in a bit. The stress response is how the body attempts to restore balance through change. It involves physical, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral components. So stress is the experience of a stressor causing a stress response. It is normal, adaptive, and essential. You would not be alive without any stress. You need it, but that doesn't mean that we should be constantly, chronically stressed out either. Stress also isn't all bad, not all of the time anyway. The term eustress is used to refer to the so-called positive stress, in response to the distress we typically associate with it. Stress is also state-dependent. How stressed we feel and how we react to stress is related to dozens of factors that change moment to moment and in general over time. At work, roles can play a big role, pun intended, in stress. For example, being unclear about one's role in an organization, feeling conflict between your role at work and your other life roles, like being a parent or a partner, and feeling overwhelmed by the tasks required for a particular role at one's work. The stress response is designed with survival in mind, and it's shared, at least to some extent, with the entire animal kingdom. But how do humans differ from other animals? We overactivate our stress response because we're chronically stressed. And that's, at least in part, because unlike animals, we tend to catastrophize, which is the tendency to exaggerate stressors to the worst case scenario we could possibly think of. And we also ruminate, which is focusing our attention on the causes and consequences of stress. Animals don't do this. When the stressor is over, they move on, but we're still thinking about criticism from 5 years ago, and as such, our bodies are constantly dealing with stress. Stress from the past, stress right now, and stress about the future. So what does a system that is designed to respond to stressors do to promote survival? The fight-or-flight stress response is a function of the sympathetic nervous system and causes changes to nearly every organ in the body in response to stress. So let's look at some of these examples. First, the brain. We're flooded with stimulating chemicals that cause us to feel alert and potentially hypervigilant. We are more emotionally reactive because the frontal lobes do a worse job of reining in the emotional areas of the brain, the limbic system. In terms of our eyes, our pupils dilate to enhance central vision, allowing us to see further and in more detail, but at the expense of losing peripheral vision, which is why we experience tunnel vision and are more likely to be startled by a coworker who comes up from behind. Saliva is not produced in the mouth because the energy is directed elsewhere, leaving us with dry mouth, a major complaint of people who experience chronic stress. In the lungs, airways relax to help get oxygen transported to the brain and to the major muscle groups. Many people experience this as a sense of hyperventilation or as heavy breathing. Our heart rate increases to get blood transported to the brain and to those major muscle groups. People tend to experience this as a racing or pounding heart. In the stomach, the GI tract is inhibited because it's a poor use of energy when our lives are on the line, which is why people often have stomach aches, butterflies in the stomach, etc. when they're feeling stressed. In terms of those big muscle groups, like the biceps and quadriceps, they receive a lot of blood and oxygen so that we can run faster and fight harder, which leaves us feeling tightness and tension in those muscles. We also sweat to cool off the body, but since blood is redirected away from the extremities towards big muscle groups, we're left with cold, clammy hands and feet. Fun fact, and not pictured on this slide, But another aspect of the stress response is to release the bladder muscles, both because urine is heavy and because holding the bladder closed takes energy that's better used elsewhere. This is why people might say that they were so scared they peed their pants. The coping strategies I'll touch on at the end of this video work by activating the other side of the nervous system, which helps to shut off this stress response. This other side, called the parasympathetic nervous system, has exactly the opposite functions as the ones just listed, including slower breathing and heart rate, better digestion, and relaxed muscles. It's sometimes called the rest and digest response because it aids the body in healing and in digestion. I also want to note quickly that while we won't review it, there are other ways to respond to stress. In addition to fight and flight, there's also fawn and faint. Fawn tends to refer to people-pleasing behaviors, and faint, just like it sounds, refers to fainting, a last-ditch effort by the nervous system. Additionally, there's a separate pathway called the HPA axis, which is where the chemical you've probably heard of, cortisol, comes into play. When it comes to stress, no two people are the same in terms of how they perceive it and how capable they feel of handling it. One way to look at the cognitive aspect of stress is referred to as primary and secondary stress appraisal. Let's go through the flow chart with an example. So it starts with a potential stressor. Let's say that Amara receives an email with a new project that needs to be completed by Friday. The primary and secondary appraisal of that stressor occurs somewhat simultaneously. Let's start with primary appraisal. The first step is to determine whether the potential stressor is irrelevant, that is, not important enough to be stressed about and doesn't really pose a risk, benign or positive, that the stressor might actually enhance their well-being, or that it is stressful, which means it's either already caused harm, may cause harm in the future, or will require some degree of growth in order to manage it. Amara decides that this stressor is a threat because if she doesn't meet expectations, she may get fired or receive criticism from her boss. In terms of secondary appraisal, the person needs to determine if they believe they can cope effectively. So Amara would be asking herself, do I have good options for coping? Do I have sufficient resources? Do I think I can manage it? Her secondary appraisal is that she can cope, but will need to make some changes in her schedule this week and reprioritize other work tasks that are not as time sensitive. As we just saw in the last slide, psychological variables influence the stress response. And two really important stress mediators are predictability and control, both of which influence our perceived self-efficacy when it comes to handling stress. Predictability means it's predictable. We know the stressor is coming or what the stressor will be like, and that can be helpful for getting our coping resources going in time to make them effective. However, predictability is not always helpful. If it's predictable, but you only have a second before it happens, that's not really helpful. Alternatively, if it's too far away to even get started dealing with it, that's not very helpful either. It's also not helpful if the stressor is really rare or if it's so frequent that you have to cope with it over and over and over again. Predictability won't help you there. When it comes to control, it's about the belief, not the reality. And of course, in most employment settings, it's high demand, low control. However, the sense of control can be really helpful, particularly for milder stressors. So even giving the choice of one's work schedule, for example, can make a big difference in terms of employees feeling that sense of control. Self-efficacy refers to an individual's belief in their capacity to deal with a given situation. Perceived predictability and control generally increase self-efficacy, and that helps the person feel like they have the coping responses they need in order to manage that stress. The opposite of self-efficacy is learned helplessness. Right? Rather than having the sense that you can manage something, that you will be effective, it's the learned sense that nothing you do will really matter. Ultimately, the more we feel in control and we feel that our stresses are predictable, the more likely we are to experience stress positively, and that is eustress. That sense of resilience and increased tolerance that comes from experiencing challenges, overcoming them, and being prepared for the next one. Again, this occurs most often when stress feels manageable, predictable, and controllable. Distress, on the other hand, is more of that problematic stress that feels vulnerable and sensitizes us to later stress. And it occurs when stress feels overwhelming, unpredictable, and/or uncontrollable. While it's not a perfect theory, much less a law, the Yerkes-Dodson Law does provide some insight into how arousal and stress influence task performance. On the left side of the chart, you see low arousal in yellow, which is associated with impaired performance due to boredom, apathy, carelessness, and a general lack of motivation. Boring tasks are hard to accomplish, and we lose steam relatively quickly. It's not motivating. Next, in green, we see moderate arousal and optimal performance. People who are moderately aroused while working on a task tend to be focused, engaged, regulated, productive, and most likely to be experiencing a state of flow and/or eustress, that positive stress. Lastly, in red, we see the chart dip back down because here people are too highly aroused. They're distressed, overwhelmed, panicked, restless, and frustrated, which impairs their performance. Keep in mind, though, that everyone is different in terms of resources, personality, etc. So everyone is different in terms of their level of stress or arousal under which they best function. Every moment is different too, so even the same person will have different levels of optimal stress at any given time. It also depends on the task itself. Easy tasks are less likely to be impaired by arousal than difficult tasks. In fact, high arousal can actually enhance performance on easy tasks. Stress is contagious. Well, maybe not technically. But the concept of reactive evocation explains how stress can feel contagious in a work environment. And if you've ever worked in an office environment, you've probably experienced this firsthand. The technical term for this process is reactive evocation. We evoke responses from others, which evokes a response from us. For example, let's say that a manager is stressed, so she's a bit short and less friendly than usual, and perhaps a bit more critical too. This is a source of stress for the employees that work for her, who then begin to show signs of stress themselves. Now, those employees are also more prone to be short and less productive, which is a new source of stress for the manager. So on. You can see how this cycle can continue and worsen over time. And this process, of course, isn't exclusive to management and executives and their relationships with their employees. It can occur between coworkers at the same level, or really between any two people. Now that we've talked about what stress is, let's talk about what we can do about it, which is coping with stress. Coping refers to any cognitive, emotional, physical, and/or behavioral way that somebody might deal with a situation that they appraise as stressful. The first way to categorize coping is as a problem-focused or emotion-focused. Problem-focused coping is aimed at addressing the stressor itself, solving the problem. For example, it would be catching up on work that is stressing you out because of an approaching deadline, addressing an interpersonal issue with a colleague, looking for a new job. Emotion-focused coping is aimed at managing the emotional reactions to the stressor. So this might be journaling, talking to a friend, engaging in a mindfulness exercise, or going on a run to blow off steam. Social support buffers stress by aiding coping, and there are a few theories related to social support. The direct effect hypothesis proposes that social support is effective because it enhances the body's physical resources for coping, that is, that it's directly helpful. In contrast, the buffering hypothesis theorizes that social support mitigates stress indirectly by aiding one's ability to cope effectively. The matching hypothesis states that social support is only effective if it's desired, matches the person's needs, and is noticed by the person that you're giving that support to. And lastly, instrumental support is the theory that helping others, that is, giving social support, is actually more effective than receiving it. Right? So this speaks to the importance of engaging in behaviors that are helpful to those around you as a way of not only feeling that you're a good person, but also coping with your own stress. As I said earlier, coping can be cognitive, emotional, physical, or behavioral. Cognitive approaches address the way we think about the stressor. Emotional, how we feel about the stressor. Physical, the way we feel physically in our bodies in response to the stressor, and behavioral, the actions we might engage in aimed at reducing the consequences of the stressor. The right coping choice is affected by various individual, environmental, sociocultural, organizational, etc., factors. It could be the person's personality. It could be the type or the intensity of the stressor, the degree of perceived control, of predictability or self-efficacy, or even simply what has worked in the past, either as personally experienced or observed. Organizations can facilitate effective stress coping by modeling vulnerability and encouraging open conversations related to mental health, by providing opportunities that enhance work-life balance, like flexible work schedules, hybrid schedules, remote working schedules, creating a culture of inclusivity that supports a sense of psychological safety and belonging, and by providing access to mental health resources like counseling. While it is ideal that an organization facilitate mental health amongst its workforce, individual employees can also enhance their own coping abilities, which will help them manage the stressors that will inevitably arise in any job and even the best-run organization. Steps for effective coping are basically as follows. First, what's wrong? What is the source of stress and the impact of the current stressors? 2, what can I do? What stressors do you have control over and what can you do to address them? That brings me to step 3. What strategies are going to be most effective for this particular set of circumstances? Step 4, do it. You have to implement the coping plan. What are the cognitive, emotional, physical, and behavioral strategies you're going to engage in? Then 5, how did it work? How did that coping plan go? Was it effective? If not, what changes are needed? And then step 6, what's next? If the coping plan needs to be adjusted, it's time to do it. If it was effective, you're done. No step 6 needed. The last thing I'm going to present in this video are 3 specific coping strategies, starting with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This strategy is often referred to as a grounding exercise because it helps bring someone back to the present moment, grounding them in the present, so to speak. Since sensory information is always present, that is, you can't feel yesterday's chair or tomorrow's couch, engaging with what we are experiencing on a sensory level can help snap someone out of the past, maybe it's regrets or guilt or traumatic experiences, and out of future worries and anxieties. Being present tends to make life feel more manageable and less overwhelming. So how do we get present? Let's try it. Wherever you're standing or sitting, look around to find 5 things you can see in the space around you. Maybe it's a lamp or a picture frame or a notebook. 4 things you can feel on your skin. Maybe it's the chair against your back or your feet pressing into the ground, your hair against your hat. 3 things you can hear going on around you. Maybe it's a car driving by, the hum of the air conditioning, or a television in the background. 2 things you can smell right now. Maybe it's your neighbor's barbecue, or freshly cut grass, or that smell of the library that's hard to put into words. Lastly, I like to end with one giant exhale. Let it all go. Just so you know, a lot of people, for number 1, will do a taste or a word that describes the inside of your mouth. I think that's really challenging for a lot of people. Another one is to name a current feeling that you're experiencing, so that might be good for you too. It doesn't really matter as long as it works for you. I like the exhale the best. The body scan is another grounding exercise, but this one is more physically focused. It works by identifying areas of tension and consciously loosening those areas to counteract the stress response on the body. So as a reminder, one common response to stress is that those big muscle groups tend to get really tense. And over time, that can create quite a bit of pain and discomfort that can become its own source of stress. Also, since it is a mindfulness exercise, it's particularly good at engaging the parasympathetic nervous system, which can help counteract some of the stress response we're used to. So let's try this one. Sit in a comfortable position and gently close your eyes or let your gaze rest off into the distance. Let your shoulders drop down away from your ears, they aren't earrings, and relax the bottom of your jaw away from the top of your jaw. Bring your attention to your breathing. Breathe in, breathe out. Just allow your natural breath. The aim of this exercise is to bring awareness to the physical sensations in different parts of your body. And your mind is probably used to labeling these sensations as good or bad. If you're able to just notice what you feel without judgment, you may notice tingling, warmth, tightness, or other sensations. Now bring your awareness to where your body makes contact with the ground. And on each out-breath, allow yourself to let go, to sink a little deeper into the surface below you. Next, bring your attention to your head and scan for any sensations in your scalp, forehead, cheeks, jaw, chin, slowly moving down towards your neck. Allow yourself to feel the sensations as you move through the area. If you become aware of any tension or other intense sensations in a particular area of your body, see if you can breathe into it. Use that in-breath to bring a gentle awareness to the sensations present in your body without trying to change them, and the out-breath to release the tension and relax into it. Now scan for any sensation in your right shoulder, right arm, right hand. Simply notice all the sensations and feel what is happening. Continue to bring awareness and a gentle curiosity to your right shoulder and right arm, right hand, and then do the same for your left shoulder, left arm, left hand. The mind will inevitably wander away from the breath and from the body from time to time, which is totally normal. When you notice your mind has wandered, gently acknowledge it, and then return your attention to the part of the body you intended to focus on. Now shift your focus to your chest, your stomach. Feel it rising as you breathe in and sinking as you exhale. Breathe in and out. Continue to notice any sensations in your stomach area. Now scan for any sensations in your right hip, right thigh, calf, and foot, followed by your left hip, left thigh, calf, and foot. Continue to bring awareness and a gentle curiosity to those sensations. Now, take a moment to notice how all of your body parts are connected. Let any sensations come to you. Describe those sensations. Are they tingly, warm, cool, heavy, floating? Accept whatever sensations are there. It's just another part of you, and it could be different in just a moment, or in another day or week. Continue to focus on your breathing while you take 3 deep breaths. And when you're ready, blink your eyes open and bring your attention back to your surroundings. We'll finish up by discussing a cognitive strategy, one that's aimed at coping with stress through how we think rather than through the physical body. Cognitive diffusion works by creating space between ourselves and our thoughts and our feelings. It's my personal favorite cognitive strategy because it allows me to see my thoughts more objectively and with some distance, and to determine how I want to respond to them. Here are a few approaches that you might try. The first is, I'm having the thought that. I'm having the thought that I'm a failure tells me that this is not a fact about myself just because I thought it. It's just a thought. I'm having the thought that I need to get revenge. I don't need to get revenge. It's a thought that I'm having. Next is to give it a voice or a character. This is not my personal approach, but I've had quite a few clients who really love this one. So you might say, "You're doing it wrong," in the voice of Janice from Friends. I won't try to do that for you because that would be wildly embarrassing. You might also say, "I can't handle this," in the voice of Fear from Inside Out. Next, name the recurring story. So here you give a story that you tell yourself often a name so that you can notice it and point it out when it's happening. Like, there's the everyone hates me story, or there it is, the I'm pathetic story again. Next, describe the thought or feeling. This thought is sharp, black, like shards of glass. My sadness is like a mushy blue mound of goo. Lastly, watching your thoughts go by. This is one of my personal favorites. I like to see my thoughts kind of like a ticker tape. And I personally find it really helpful for observing thoughts and feelings as they go by and reducing my tendency to overly attach to them or to react to them before I've thought through what I want to do.